So let's interrogate the numbers now and unpack just what the medium-term budget means for you. We've brought the experts into studio. I'm joined by Owen Gomo from Nkunzi Wealth and Craig Pfeiffer from ABSA. Thanks so much both for your time. Let's start with you, Owen. Would I be correct in saying that was quite a circumspect budget?
Yeah, it was a very difficult budget, and there was not much in there that was earth-shattering, and at the same time, he didn't have much to work with as well. But I think what potentially is more disappointing for me is the fact that we still don't have that much clarity around the stimulus package that the president was talking about, which we thought we would have a lot more clarity in this current budget. And obviously, Treasury reducing the estimated growth rate for the country to 0.7% from 1.5% is also another challenge that I think sitting and looking at what potentially the ratings agencies could do. I don't think that the next round of news out of the ratings agencies, especially coming out of Moody's, is going to be one that's easy on us. There's still a lot to be done, and the good governor minister did say that we have a lot to do, definitely. But I think that in this budget, honestly, there's in my view, there's a lot more that's negative than there is positive.
Craig, Owen's saying that we didn't get much clarity about that reprioritization, what people are calling a stimulus package, but we did have some numbers that are coming out of there. We know 15.9 billion rand going towards infrastructure programs, that reprioritization of that amount, 16.5 billion allocated to various programs, including funding and restoring capacity at SARS.
Yes, I mean, there were some items, and that 50 billion in total. So there was a little bit of a discussion around where that's being allocated. But at the end of the day, that 50 billion is just coming from somewhere else. So it's not an additional 50 billion that would really stimulate or drive growth going forward. I think on the disappointing front then was that we didn't have any more or a view going forward about what that economic stimulus is going to be. So this time around we were going to try and get some stimulus from reprioritising spending, taking from Peter to pay Paul. But there wasn't it wasn't very clear about the 3-year framework where we're going with that.
We also saw that there's a revenue shortfall of 24.7 billion rand, and there's a need to obviously tighten the belt and see what's not working and what is working. I thought it was interesting that in the Q&A session, Finance Minister Tito Mboweni saying institutions like SAA are not holy cows and perhaps they should be closed down because the infrastructure and the transport that needs to be prioritized is things like rail and road for poor people, not rich people.
Yes, I mean, an important point once again, the amount of money that needs to be raised to sort of meet the budget deficit there. The budget deficit is at 4%, it's a concerningly high number. But I think if you look at the fact that the minister also spoke about wasteful expenditure, he spoke about a number of 27 billion odd rands, which would probably make up for some of these revenues that we need to find somewhere. But I really think the best thing he could do, he looks like a very resolute minister, and I hope he's very independent and he's going to put South Africa first, unlike what I've seen before. And I'm hoping that he's going to make those decisions that are big ticket items that will move the needle. He has made a lot of hinting, towards, the government employee numbers being too big. The government wage bill is just too much, sitting at 36% of current government expenditure, and he needs to see that number ideally at 30%, which can only mean that we are going to see job cuts in the government space. And I hope that that decision, he's going to be bold enough to consider it carefully, at least not just do an outright reduction across the government departments, but perhaps maybe give people who have been working for the government, for a long time, people who are 55 years and above, maybe ask them to go home. I think that will create a little bit of room for the budget. And he obviously is under really a lot of pressure, in my view, to find the right balance between being too heavy-handed in a time when the economy is not doing well and doing what's right to sort of reduce government expenditure, which is extremely important.
We've been hearing about rumours about another VAT increase. When he was speaking today, he was saying that between tax, corporate tax, value-added tax, money needs to come from somewhere. We can't just expect government to magically come up with money. And also there was a focus on private and public sector relationships in order to boost the economy and grow our economy. What do you think some of the solutions are there, and were there any that were clear and proposed in that medium-term budget policy statement?
I think they weren't all that clear, but I think the principle was quite clear that The finance minister wants to see government and the private sector working a lot closer together. You've got that brains trust and people with experience in the private sector that they can work with governments across all areas. We saw the SARS of yesteryear was created in just that fashion. Paying people, bringing in CAs, and that was a positive success story. So more of that, across more and more of the government departments.
So we're also seeing that 23 billion rand is owed to municipalities. Is owed by municipalities to service providers, that's mainly to Eskom and water agencies. Did we get solutions on how we can get out of that? Because that's also money that could be flowing back into our economy.
Yeah, and once again, it's an issue of mismanagement of these municipalities and the local governments and the whole government finances at large, where you still have a regular expenditure that goes into tens of billions. I think you have no idea how difficult it is out there for small entrepreneurs to get paid money by the government after having done work, as an example, which is money that the guys would take and go and hire more people and grow their companies, etc. But in the case of these municipal bills that are owed out there, we've had the stories around how much Eskom is owed by some townships out there, and the failure to do proper administration that would make sure that these services that are delivered get paid for. In my view, if we perpetuate that status quo, you will see that number continue to increase, which is actually not very ideal.
One of the other figures that we did see that there was clarity on is housing subsidies amounting to 1 billion rand will be centralized to help low and middle income households access affordable home loans.
So clearly that's a positive. At the end of the day, still a very small number. And I think that comes home to the fact that the economy is growing at a very, very slow pace. We're not getting the tax revenues in. And in an economy and in that kind of framework, it's difficult to then just add more taxes or increase the tax rate. And coming back to Owen's point, it's really where they can move the dial is to cut back expenditure. And if they can cut back some of that wasted expenditure and also reduce our debt levels. We spend nearly 180 billion rand plus this year just on interest on our debt, which is a massive amount of essentially wasted expenditure. So if you think that we pay 180 billion rand on interest on our government bonds, and here we're talking about housing of 1 billion, we can do a lot more houses if we have a lot less debt. So it's about growing the economy, growing the pie, getting in more tax revenues, cutting back the expenditure. It all sounds so simple, doesn't it?
It does. I was going to say,
getting that budget deficit down, reducing our debt, and then getting that money out into the economy, into the real economy, rather than paying bondholders.
How long will this process take? I know he's speaking to us about what's going to happen in the next 3 years and how money is going to be reprioritized in spending. But to make an actual difference, and as South Africans sitting at home and watching, when are we going to say, you know what, Minister Mboweni was right, and we can actually now see green shoots and progress from this medium-term budget that he delivered, and we can see the results of the things that he was saying?
Jesus, it's not going to be a one-day game, definitely. It's going to be more like a test match. It's going to take a long time. And I think, unfortunately for us, we do have these presentations by government officials, but we never get given the outcomes of all of these actions they say they will take. There is no accountability. There's no reporting back mechanism. And I think that's something that the minister needs to start saying, okay, guys, I said I'm going to build 1,000 houses. Oh, by the way, we've actually managed to build 2,000 houses. I said we're going to build 15 dams in the country. We struggled, we delivered 13, but these are the reasons. And so for this reason, we are reshuffling people around. We need an effective government. We need a government that actually is putting the country first, a government that's not looking to the next 5 years for elections to say, if we make the tough decisions, potentially we could lose votes. And I tell you what the country really needs right now is someone who's going to be bold enough and start making those difficult decisions. But unfortunately, you can only make those decisions if you get the people's trust back. I could tell you that there's people out there who would argue that, we can pay more tax if our houses are secure, if we're safe on the roads, if we can get healthcare easily, if we can get education for our kids easily and not paying too much cash. But now you're paying so much tax, and at the same time you have to pay for your own needs, which is not a great dynamic for any country for that matter. And I think that the governor kept referring to reconfiguring. We need to start reconfiguring the way we approach our decision making when it comes to national finances. And I believe they need to be bolder. And they just need to move into a direction where they're not going to be questioned a lot by the voting populace. They need to behave themselves in a manner that says we can trust them. When they come out to us and say, guys, you know what? This year we're not going to build any more RDP houses. We will understand why, and we will understand that the things are tough out there.
Very briefly, as we wrap up, Craig, is Tito Mboweni that trusted person who, and the way he delivered the budget today, do you think that what Owen is saying is going to resonate with people as they watch him conduct himself as finance minister?
Yes, I think 10 out of 10 for his approach today and the delivery. I think the content failed him a bit as far as that budget deficit is widening and the debt is still expanding. So that's heading in the wrong direction. But he didn't have much influence over the content of that. I think as we go into February, he'll have more of a say, but a man with a good track record. So I think with our governor and our finance minister, we're in better hands.
Craig Pfeiffer and Owen Komo joining me there in studio about a discussion on the medium-term budget policy statement that was delivered by Finance Minister Tito Mboweni earlier on today.